Hi and welcome to the Student Life webinar from the University of Cambridge. I'm Olivia Hilton-Pennant, the QC Access and Funding Officer.
And I'm Annie Hoyle, a student ambassador.
And over the course of this webinar, we'll be telling you all about life at the University of Cambridge. So to tell you a little bit more about us, as I said, I'm Olivia and I study philosophy at Cambridge. I'm also from North London and fun fact, I have a black belt in karate.
And I'm Annie. I study theology and religious studies. I'm originally from Suffolk, and my fun fact is that I can do the splits. So we're going to tell you a little bit now about the kind of methods of learning at Cambridge. So some of them are really similar to what you would get at any university. So you might have heard of lectures. It's kind of, you sit in a big room, usually there's a lot of you, there's someone at the front, they do most of the talking, you do most of the listening, sometimes there's a bit of a chance at the end for some questions and answers, but mostly it's just kind of quite kind of passive thing, whereas classes are a bit more active. You're usually expected to prepare something, contribute a little bit more. There's usually fewer of you there as well. There's also labs and field trips, which you don't do in theology, but I think it's for more practical or sciencey subjects to give you that kind of hands-on experience. The really kind of unusual thing about Cambridge, though, is supervisions, which is not something you get at most universities. I think it's pretty much us and Oxford, although they call it something different. So supervisions are kind of one-on-one, or there might be like 2 or 3 of you. You're there with a supervisor who's usually an academic or an expert. You sort of prepare work over the course of the week. So that might be an essay or it might be a problem sheet. You send that to your supervisor, they kind of read over it, and then you have a kind of hour or so to discuss it, work through any problems that you might have, and quite often like discuss the topic in a little bit more detail. So that's something that's actually really, really enjoyable once you get used to it, even though it can sound quite intimidating to start off with. Because it means that sometimes if you have questions that you wouldn't necessarily want to ask in a massive lecture theatre, you have the chance to do that, but also just to kind of delve a little bit deeper into the topic. As well as that, quite often people spend a little bit of their time, or a lot of their time, depending on their subject, doing independent study. So when I said you have to prepare like an essay or a problem sheet, that's normally what you're doing. You'll be either in the library, in your room, in a cafe or something, just working on your own, reading or kind of going back over lecture notes, that kind of thing. That does take up a lot more time at university than it probably does at school. So that's something that's quite different.
So in terms of academic support at Cambridge, there are lots of libraries, from department libraries to college libraries to the big university library. There are also lots of academic journals that you can access as a student. So often, if you're working in your room and you need to access an essay, rather than popping down to the library, you can go online, type in your credentials and get access that way. In terms of staff support and personal assistance, every student at the university has a Director of Studies, which is the person that's responsible for managing their learning within their college. And we'll talk a bit more about colleges later on in this webinar. There's also the Disability Resource Centre, and so any student that identifies as disabled, may that be with physical impairments or visual impairments or any other disabilities, can go to the Disability Resource Centre for help and to get adjustments. And finally, in the same way that there are staff at school that know you who are academic, that's the same at university. So your supervisor, who you see at least once a week, you'll get to know quite well, as well as the lecturers, as well as PhD students that also might be in your department.
So there's other sources of support as well. So in your colleges, as we said, we'll talk a little bit about that later. You have your pastoral tutor. So it might sound like they should be an academic person, but in fact, they're kind of more responsible for looking after you in terms of your general welfare, other things that might go wrong. So it's less the kind of academic side of your life at Cambridge and more pretty much everything else. So they're there to provide you with support in that way. You've also got your Director of Studies who does that kind of academic side. Colleges normally have either a nurse, some of them provide counsellors as well, or instead. So they're there to kind of do basic level kind of medical help, sometimes like mental health support. So there's quite a lot available in terms of your college. Another thing is that colleges tend to provide some kind of financial support. So whether that's kind of sports bursaries, hardship funds, quite a lot of them have just other sorts of bursaries that they provide if you're eligible for kind of high level support from the government, which means that, you know, people at Cambridge generally don't find themselves in financial hardship. Cambridge do really try to avoid that. You've also got in your college what's called the JCR, which is pretty much a students' union. So they kind of are responsible for sort of organising a lot of events, but also for providing you support. So there's quite often officers responsible, so like the LGBT officer, international officer, sometimes BME officers, who are responsible for making sure that the needs of certain groups are met. So usually JCRs are pretty aware that the experience of coming to Cambridge can be different for different people, and that sometimes that might mean that you have certain needs that need to be looked after. So your JCR will try to make sure that that's provided for.
In terms of other sources of support, Annie briefly touched on financial support available in colleges, and there's also the wider Cambridge Bursary Scheme, more information of which you'll be able to find online, and that's subject to eligibility depending on your household income. But as I said, there's more information about that online. As well as there being in-college counselling, the university also has a university-wide counselling service that you can request to see counsellors from if you're going through any difficulties, may that be related to work or personal issues. The counselling service is there for you. I talked about the Disability Resource Centre earlier, but as I said, if you have any disabilities, you can go to the Disability Resource Centre for advice, for help with adjustments, and also just have a chat about things that may be concerning you. And then going back to the point of JCRs, as well as having college level students' union, there's also the university-wide students' union. And if you look to the bottom of the screen and to the left, you'll see the current sabbatical officer team. So as you can see, there's a president, an education officer, a welfare and rights officer, a disabled students officer, an access officer, and a women's officer. And across the team, we work on a number of issues relating to students from a wide range of groups. And then finally, as well as having an LGBT officer and an international officer, JCRs have an ethnic minorities officer or a racial equalities officer, and that person's there to represent students who may be from underrepresented ethnic groups, as well as a welfare officer who might promote positive mental health. So at the moment, it's Mental Health Week, and so there are lots of stickers and puppies and nice things kind of coming onto college sites to ensure that students promote positive mental health. And then finally, a women's officer who might run the college FemSoc or ensure that women's welfare within the college is managed.
Okay, so we're going to talk to you a little bit now about college life. You can see here a variety of pictures of what it might mean to be in a college. I'm just going to explain it to you in a little bit more detail. So Cambridge is divided up into colleges, which are a little bit kind of like halls of residence, only they do a lot more. So you might have heard of halls of residence. At other universities, it tends to be where you kind of live, sometimes where you eat, like in hall or whatever. So there's that, but colleges also provide a lot more. Some of your kind of academic kind of life will be organised from college. So your director of studies that we talked about earlier is based in your college, and they're responsible for organising your supervisions. Although quite often you find that you go outside your own college for supervisions anyway. They're also kind of where you have your social life. I think a lot of people find that their main kind of friendship group is in college, because it's the people you're living with, it's the people that you see when you go to dinner, it's the people who like live next door to you. So I think like it's a really nice way to have a kind of smaller little community inside a much larger university. So I found that was really good when I first came to Cambridge, that I almost had like a ready-made friendship group there. They also kind of organise things like what are called BOPs, which are just parties, other kind of social activities. So we've had like an afternoon tea thing recently, movie nights, all that kind of stuff. So it can be really nice without having to like actually really leave home. You've got a lot of stuff going on.
This is an example of a college map. So the college in question is Sydney Sussex College, and it's one of my favourite colleges because it's right across the road from Sainsbury's, and I love food. But as you can see, we've picked out some of the key features that you'll see across most colleges, such as a bar or a common room that will serve both alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks, and may also be used for events such as quiz nights or karaoke nights. As you can see, as mentioned previously, every college has a library in which you'll find a range of books spanning a number of subjects. But of course, you might have to pop out to your faculty library or the wider university library if you need a book on a particularly niche area. This college also has sports facilities, and in particular, it has a squash court. Sports facilities vary across colleges, so some may have squash courts, some may have, pitches, tennis courts. It really just depends. And then as you can see, and as mentioned before, colleges are home to your accommodation. And so at Sydney Sussex College, there's accommodation on the left-hand side of the map, as well as slightly further away. And then finally, Sydney and all other colleges have a canteen and or a dining hall, which is where students can eat breakfast, lunch and dinner, should they so wish.
So I'm going to talk to you a little bit now about the social life. We've covered the studying aspect of being at university, but it's not all hard work. So at Cambridge, we have like a multitude of societies, and that can be at the university level or at college level. Some of the university level stuff is really, really kind of top tier. Some of the people that do, for example, the sport are like amazing athletes. And the same for like drama. You might even have heard of some of the actors that have been at Cambridge, like Eddie Redmayne. But also there's a lot you can get involved with if you've never done things before. So when I first came to Cambridge, I joined the beginners ballroom dance team, which was something I'd never done before and since have kind of let go. But it was really fun that like by the end of my first term, I was competing for Cambridge in something completely new to me. As well as kind of having university level stuff, you've got college level stuff, which tends to be a little bit more kind of casual and relaxed. So you can find yourself just joining, a casual football team or whatever, and you have generally kind of have to commit slightly less to that. So it can be nice to find a way to just have fun with your friends, maybe make some new friends, that kind of thing. As well as that, there's the usual stuff you find in a town. So there's the pubs, clubs, bars, and theatres. Some people spend a lot of their time doing those things, some people spend less. I think one of the things that's really useful to bear in mind is that you will always find people that want to do the same kind of stuff as you. So whether you come here really like wanting to join in with everything, or whether your idea of fun is just like sitting in the common room watching a movie, you will find people that like want to hang out with you. One of the great things like when you first get to Cambridge is the Freshers' Fair. So that's basically how I decided to do ballroom dance, is that I just kind of walked up to the stand and they kind of said, oh, do you want to join our mailing list? And that's how I got involved. There's so many things that you would never even like think of before you come to university that it's really worth going just so you can see what's on offer.
These are some examples of student societies that you can get involved with at Cambridge. So as you can see, there's a real diverse range of things that you can do, ranging from hosting our own radio show on Cam FM, which is our student radio station, to being part of the university show choir. So if you love Glee or High School Musical as much as I do, that's the perfect place to be. To the athletics club, so if you're keen on sports, keen on running, throwing, jumping, but might not not have been the best at it at school, or may have been the county champion. The athletics club is a really welcoming place for people kind of all levels of experience. We've also got student newspapers such as the Cambridge Student. We have a hip hop society, which is really popular. Students frequently host ciphers and open mic nights. So there's definitely scope to kind of hone your craft if hip hop is what you're interested in. In terms of like cultural societies, we have the BME campaign, which is for students from Black and minority ethnic groups, and the campaign really works to ensure that the BME student experience at Cambridge is one that is enjoyable. We also have an incredible Islamic society, which is extremely welcoming. Every year they host Explore Islam Week, covering a range of events from henna to kind of like
Homeless
an,
outreach was one
yeah.
this year.
We've also got Bangladeshi Society, LGBT plus campaign. We have a startup society. So if you fancy yourself being, I don't know, the next Steve Jobs, you've got to start somewhere, and the startup society is a great place to start.
So to just give you an idea of how that works out, so while I've been at Cambridge as well as doing ballroom dance, I've been involved a lot in my college's students' union, we call it at my college. So I was access officer in my first year, and then I was ENTS officer, which meant that I was just basically organising parties. And I also got to run my college bar, which was really fun. I've also been involved a little bit in some kind of music stuff, including my college choir, and a little bit of politics stuff in the university as well.
And on my part, I was also quite involved with my college JCR, so I was the access officer as well, which was in a way a stepping stone to becoming the QSU access officer. I was also president of the Afro-Caribbean Society, which was quite fun, and it meant that I got to kind of intertwine some of my access work with work around increasing the number of Black students at Cambridge. I was quite involved with the Athletic Society, which is why I chose it for the presentation, but it is a truly welcoming society, and even though I don't train anymore, I'm still kind of on the fringes, supporting, excited for our big matches against Oxford. I also wrote for the student newspaper once because it meant that I could see a show for free, and I love freebies. I auditioned for the show choir, didn't quite make the final cut, but it was an enjoyable experience nonetheless. So as you can see, between the two of us, we've done so much, and there really are so many societies and so many different things that you can get involved with at Cambridge. And with over 700 societies on offer, there's no way that you can't find something for you. And if you can't find something that you enjoy, but you want to set it up, you can do that. And the beauty of having, students union as well as college level students unions is that there is often funding available to help you to set up these societies so that you can kind of get involved and reach out to students who have similar hobbies to you. So in terms of Cambridge as a city, we often like to think of it as a town with a university with a town in it. So the university does play a big part in the life of Cambridge. We're quite engaged with the community, and so lots of students do voluntary work. May that be acting as a big sibling to a younger student who lives in the area but might be from a low socioeconomic background, to homeless outreach, as was mentioned before, to getting involved with rowing, or to visiting the local market. There really is something for everyone. And in terms of getting around Cambridge, it's small enough that you don't need to drive around. I mean, most people walk, a lot of people cycle as well, but some people don't. And if you do want to get the bus, there are buses that you can get throughout town, some starting from as little as £1. So it's a really accessible city in the sense that it's very well connected, and you don't have to spend much on transport because everything is very much within walking distance or cycling distance.
So I'm going to give you a couple of examples here of how this all ends up fitting together. So this example is of someone who's very busy. They're doing a sciences subject, which tends to play into that. People doing sciences subjects tend to have more kind of contact hours, so they're in classes and lectures a little bit more than kind of arts and humanities students. So you can see this person's got a lot to do, but also they find time to go to a badminton match, hang out with their friends, and do a little bit of socializing as well. By comparison, you can see that my day, I don't always get out of bed quite this late, but I spend a lot more time doing what we talked about earlier, which is the kind of independent learning. So you can see I spent a bit of time kind of doing reading for an essay. I also get time as well to spend with my friends, get out, go and see a debate. But yeah, there's a lot less kind of contact time. It does really vary from subject to subject. And you'll find that some days, some weeks are really, really busy. Some days you get a chance to chill. It really depends on the time of year and what you've got going on.
So that's all from us. If you want to find out more about Cambridge, I'd recommend going to applytocambridge.com, which is home to our alternative prospectus, which is quite different to the prospectus that you often get when you go to open days or higher education fairs. The alternative prospectus is written by current students for prospective students. So if you look closely, you might spot Annie and I on the website, but you'll also spot many of our peers who are providing their opinion on their course, their college, what they do in their spare time. As well as the alternative prospectus, you can access the university standard prospectus on the undergraduate website. We also run a project called CamTweet, which is run by students from across the university studying a broad range of subjects. And if you go onto Twitter and search hashtag CamTweet, you'll be able to find accounts for each of the subjects studied at undergraduate level. And every day, a student will tweet at least once about what they've been up to. They'll tweet pictures, and it's just a great way to understand what it's like to be a student in real time. Occasionally throughout the year, we run student Q&As, during which time you can tweet a student and they'll be able to respond within minutes. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Thanks, bye.